Hey friend, welcome back to the Becoming Home podcast, a project of fullyabundantlife.com. This month we are talking about Pride Month. We're super excited for this month because we're really unpacking some old toxic stuff and getting rid of old things that we used to have, like old fears and old ideas about homosexuality and the Bible and religion. And so we're really excited to be unpacking those things and coming into new love for ourselves, for other people, new understanding of God and spirituality and relationship. We're super excited. Stick with us. Let's get into the first conversation.
It's good times. It's good times.
There
It's all
you go.
good. Okay. So, hi, how are you? Welcome to the podcast. Yeah. Welcome back. All right, June, Pride Month. We're recognizing Pride Month and excited to do this conversation this month. When we're looking for kind of the main theme that each month has throughout the year, that's kind of our like content plan, right? We're kind of looking at each month and deciding, okay, what's on everybody's minds, what's going on in the world, what's everybody going to be, like kind of thinking about, paying attention to. And there were a couple different choices for June, but we went with Pride Month. Mostly because I was like, ooh, yes. And Joe was like, ooh, okay.
Sounds like fun.
Accurate?
Oh,
Is that accurate? Okay. I don't mean to throw you under the bus.
Oh,
Joe's really nervous about this, but no, you're not really nervous.
everybody pray for her.
Pray for Joe. No, I'm excited for this month. I feel like this is an important thing to talk about. On the podcast, we end up spending a lot of time just kind of processing like religious trauma and the spiritual journey and how it overlaps with like regular everyday issues and love and I don't know, what have we been talking about recently? Personal growth, yeah, like just kind of where the spiritual journey intersects all these other regular places in our lives that we show up for. And I was right away very interested in this idea of the church and its intersection with the LGBTQIA plus community, which we won't go through all the acronyms every time. We'll say LGBT or the queer community. If we need to alter that or change that, we're open to your corrections. Because I'm not super immersed in that community, and so I don't have necessarily maybe all the right language or the verbiage or whatever, but um I have a deep desire to like just love people better today than I did yesterday. And that's the goal of the podcast, right? To become home with one another, you and I, but then like how do we emulate that for the world? How do we hold space for other people to become home with us and amongst themselves and all the things? Like how do we as humans become home more and more with one another? So I thought, oh, Pride Month would be a great place to have this conversation about, how our journey with, the gay community or the queer community. I know definitely have a past with that. And you and I have had similar religious histories. So I know your intersection is similar, but I wanted to have other people join in the conversation and talk about like what has your experience been, especially someone from the gay community or the queer community to come on and say like what their experience has been, positive or negative, and like just kind of find spaces where we can love on one another and kind of think about where do we need to grow as a community, as a faith-based community, as a non-faith community, like just all of us as people. Where can we grow? Where can we show up for one another and love each other better? That's the goal, right? Let's love each other better. So we have two guests coming on this month. Christy is a friend of mine who I met in this group I'm a part of that's kind of like there's a lot of deconstruction happening, but it's mostly reconstruction. So like, not walking away from faith or not walking away from spirituality, but taking apart and really looking more deeply at the things that we've been taught. And do we need, what do we keep? What's wrong? What are there things that need to be thrown out for sure? So let's figure that out. And then let's just keep working on learning how to love each other better. Okay, so Christy is a friend of mine from this sort of rethinking faith group that we're both a part of. And she made a post recently sharing a resource for people to learn more about the queer community. And sort of like it had a lot of like definitions of things I had never heard of. So that was really great. And she just mentioned how, she has come out of a season of like the old religious way, which is like homosexuality is a choice. And if you choose that, you're going to hell, has come out of that way of thinking into something that's more loving and more inclusive. I guess you would consider that like she considers herself being an ally, so we'll define kind of what some of these terms are and what that means to be an ally. And so I thought it would be really interesting to hear her story. She and I have some similarities in our past as far as like cult membership and like pretty fundamental Western Christian, pitchfork ideas, and so, but we're both kind of coming out of that and stepping into new, more loving places. And so and she's a wealth of information for like resources. Every time somebody asks for something in the group, she's like, here's 50 resources you can go to. So she has just a ton of information. She has a really powerful story of how she's kind of come around. So we're going to talk to her, and that's going to be a great conversation. And then we also have another guest on. So my brother-in-law has a brother who is gay and came out to his family as an adult. He's now married, he and his partner have been together. I'm not sure. They just got married recently, but they've been together for quite some time. But there was a whole like issue because my brother-in-law's parents, that family's pretty religious too, and kind of along similar lines that I used to be. And so when my brother-in-law's brother came out to the family, like it was difficult because there was a lot of issues. And then he got together with Brendan, is who was going to be on the podcast. And Brendan had to do some working through of relationships with the parents as well. And like, listen, like, love you. And, so like they had some things to work out. And he also has a long history like with the church as well, and things that he experienced growing up and when he discovered that he was gay, and he tried not to be gay because of everything he heard at church, and just how you'd go to hell if you were gay. And so it's a scary thing for a little kid who's feeling these things at like I don't remember if he said 5 years old or 5th grade, or I just remember like really really young. So he's going to come on and kind of share his story of dealing with what the church kind of was telling him, what he was hearing at church versus what he was feeling inside, versus how do I make peace with who I am and God and who I am being told God is, and all these things. So he's got a really great story, and he's going to come on and share that story as well. So I'm pretty excited. Yeah, I'm really excited for this month's conversations. And our goal in the podcast always, not just with June and Pride Month and all these things, but always is just to love each other better than yesterday, love myself better today than I did yesterday, and just kind of open my world up more and open our community up more to step into love in better ways. Because I feel like a lot of us have so much trauma with the relationships in our lives where we should have been taught what love really is.
Mm.
And there's so much trauma there. And so it's like, how do I love myself? How do I love others? Like, I don't even know how to do that. So if we can come together and kind of, learn some of these healthy ways to step more and more into love and what love really is, what love should be, it's like you try to maybe tell somebody, you got to learn to love yourself. And it's like they've been abused and beaten. And it's like they have such distorted views of love. You can't even say that, you can't even tell people that a lot of times. So I'm really grateful that, we have this place to kind of sit down and talk about what does it really mean to love? What is the definition of love? We talked about that in February. Love, what is it? How do people experience it? And discovered that different people have different views on it and all the things. But, as long as we can just keep having the conversations, we can keep growing, keep learning, and be able to step into more and more of it every day, one conversation at a time.
Yeah, I think it's been a really good month. I'm excited. I'm excited to meet both Christy and Brendan.
Mm-hmm.
That'll be cool.
Yeah.
That's so cool. I'm excited.
Yeah.
Cool.
So like before we get into those conversations though, I do want to take one episode at least to kind of give a little bit of background on where you and I come into this conversation and, like to be vulnerable with where we're at and to know that, we're not all the way there yet either. And so like what's our, intersection and where are we at in our personal growth in this realm of loving people better, especially with, similar Christian histories of like, anti-gay or queer community, or I don't know. I guess you and I never really have talked about this realm because I haven't been immersed in that community either. So it's not just a, topic of conversation really. So I'm excited for the opportunity and would really love to hear kind of, where you're at, how you're feeling about these conversations, what you're nervous about, just a time to be vulnerable with what we're bringing to the table.
Yeah, absolutely. It's been really cool thinking and just kind of marinating on the topic for this month since we've talked about it. I'm like, all right, it's gonna happen. Like
this is happening.
And it's been really cool just to kind of even just see the change in nervousness because I'm a lot less nervous than I was at the beginning, which is really nice. But the reason for feeling so nervous is because I was raised in a pitchfork community, if I can say that. We were raised in a church of very straight people, and everybody was, this is the way, and whoever is not straight or doesn't identify exactly how we do, must not possess the heart of God, must not be within the will of the Father, cannot be loved by God, is separated from God. It was like the whole LGBT community is kind of put on this pedestal with like, in the Bible how it says like all sins are equal. The church makes them unequal. So like sex before you're married, that's like high offensive sin, you're going straight to hell. Murder, obviously, like higher than that. Lying, kind of low. Lots of people at church lie to you because you go up and say, how are you? And they say good, and they're clearly not. Like,
Yeah.
Like, they kind of make it a little unequal. Well, LGBT community, everything is kind of put on the same level for me when growing up as like premarital sex. That was kind of like the unforgivable sin, basically. Because to be honest, growing up, I thought the unforgivable sin was having sex before you're married. And then I did it. So, oops. Oopsie. Sorry.
Hey there, forgive the interruption. I do just want to mention that this month we do get into some pretty serious things where people are sharing in their stories about abuse and some topics that could be triggering to some folks. So if you have some triggers around, types of abuse that you have suffered, or even suicide, things like that. We have resources to help. But I do want to give you a heads up that those are some of the issues in this month's conversations. And the great thing I'm excited about is that they are sharing about hope and resources and help. So if you want to stick around for that, please do. Just be aware it's in the conversations this month. Also, if you have a chance to support the podcast in any way, if it has helped you, served you, encouraged you in any way, you can head over to buymeacoffee.com/the Becoming Home podcast. We'll have a link in the description or the show notes, and you can buy us a coffee or join the $5 membership, whatever your flavor, you can support us there. Thanks for considering that. Now let's get back to the conversation.
But I kind of thought, being, gay or lesbian, whatever, trans, all the things, whatever, I thought that was kind of same grain. So I was like, oh my gosh, that's horrible. I need to go. When you think of those things and you see people living that lifestyle, first thing that comes to mind, I need to go save you. Because I don't want you to live a life of darkness, despair, and, brimstone from hell. Like, that's terrible. So I grew up very much have to go save these hopeless people. Like, it was this whole idea of like, gosh, I don't even know the words to put to it, but like complete, just seeing these people living in this, it was literally like looking at someone being like, oh my gosh, you're living this completely evil life and you have no idea what's going to happen to you. Like, I have to work so hard to just bring you to see just the sin you're living in. And first of all, that's a really powerless place to stand. It's not my job to go save somebody. Straight up.
Yeah.
I can speak encouragement. I can speak like my opinion over people all day long. It's not my job to save everybody and to save the people that I disagree with. And that's kind of where my mindset has shifted now as an adult. I'm still very much reconstructing my view of this because, again, I've had very little experience with like being immersed into this group in terms of like education or like understanding, like because the church even has this, I don't know if it's just the church, but there's a community of people with this idea of the LGBT community just being a mental illness.
Yeah.
And so that was kind of where I landed for a while. And I don't think it's just that small.
Yeah.
Like, I'm part of a mental illness community. I have depression. Yay. Like, it's just not that small. So as an adult, I would say I'm landing in this kind of position of just what we're here to talk about, love and support, and you're a person. Like, I love you no matter what. And I truly want to embody the hands and feet and heart of Jesus when he walked on the planet. And what did Jesus do? And I was just talking to my sister about this today. And oh my gosh, it was so great. He didn't walk up to the woman at the well. He didn't walk up and say, you're going around too much. He said, hey, can I have a drink of water? And he got to know her, had a conversation, and he did call her out on like having multiple husbands, but I don't know her total life situation. Like, maybe she was sleeping around a lot and actually did have a husband that she was cheating on, but like he was able to call her out on the things like, you're hurting people, you're hurting these men by sleeping with all of them, because he took the time to get to know her and he asked her to meet his needs. I'm thirsty. And that's what he's done with people all over time. He's gotten to know them, truly just had a heart of love and kindness. So that's kind of where my mindset is now, is just how can I be the most loving support that I can be. And it's kind of funny because my idea of support even has changed, because I was raised with the idea of I support you and not your decisions.
Yeah.
And it was a very
I support
thing.
you. I love you, but I disagree with your lifestyle.
Yeah. But what really happens is with the LGBT community, what I was like, oh, it's your decision, your lifestyle. It is actually them. So if I say I love you, but not your decision, literally I'm saying I love you, but I don't.
Yeah. Yeah.
So like it's just a contradiction. So how can I be as supportive and loving just towards everybody equally? It doesn't, at the end of the day, it doesn't matter what each person thinks, says, does. Like they all deserve love. They all need love at the same amount. So it's less having to do with like being on this crusade to go save people or like whatever. It's just about being genuine and loving. So that being said, I'm feeling my nerves like, I'm gonna say something wrong, or like, genuinely, I'm probably like, I feel like I'm gonna say something that's gonna get me canceled or whatever. But like the main motivation in my heart is love and peace and happiness. Like,
okay, hippie child. No,
I wore the right shirt for it. So yeah, like as much serenity across the board as possible.
Yeah.
As what I'm shooting for. And whether I disagree with somebody's opinion or not, I don't really care. Like,
yeah, because like, okay, there's three things that stood out to me. So one is this idea of saving people. So I want to touch on that. Second is an idea of Jesus and the woman at the well. I have a slightly different perspective of that interaction I'd love to touch on. And then finally, like, oh gosh, what was the third thing now? I don't remember. If it comes back, it'll come back. But like it's interesting how when our perspectives on the need to save people changes, it can change for a couple different reasons, right? So like either I don't need to save them anymore because there's nothing to save them from, as in like for me, I no longer believe in a place of eternal conscious torment where an angry God or even a sad God sends his creation to be tortured in a lake of fire for all of eternity because for 80 years they didn't choose him while they lived on earth. So if I don't believe in that concept anymore, then that's one reason I don't need to save them, because they're not going to that place. I don't need to save them from that. Okay, well, maybe I still need to save them from something else, like save them from their own choices or hell on earth, like you go down that path, you're going to have a hard time, let me save you from that. It might not be eternal conscious torment, but like, let me help you make a better decision in your life right now so that it doesn't hurt you. You know what I mean? Like, so there's that kind of saving, but then there's also like total freedom in my mind. This is just my thoughts about saving. There's this place of total freedom where it's like more kind of what I think what you were getting at was like, it's not my job.
Yeah.
Like I'm not big enough to save anyone from anything.
Yeah.
And it was never my directive from God. Like that's not why I'm on the planet. That's not why I walk the earth, to save the world from their poor choices. Other people don't want to they're not going to hear that anyway. Like I got to have my own journey. You know what I'm saying? Like I appreciate your advice. Maybe I'll take it, maybe I won't, whatever. But I don't put it in anyone's hands to save me from anything anymore. So like I don't find it my mission on earth anymore, which is a massive shift, a total 180 from my religious life. Like it was our job as disciples of Jesus Christ, ambassadors of Christ, to reflect exactly what Christ looked like, behaved like, felt like, spoke like, all the things, so that people would be attracted to him. Like they could only see him through me. And the reflection that I put out into the world, if I claim to be a Jesus follower, then I better look exactly like Jesus. Otherwise, I'm interfering with someone's opportunity to step into and know Christ.
It takes away uniqueness.
I mean, that's a hell of a lot of pressure to put on a person, right? So I no longer consider that true. Like, that's not true of any of us. And then also, even in my mind with my reconstruction journey, there's no eternal conscious torment to save them from. A. B. Everyone is made through, in, by, for, of Christ. The thing, the goopity goo that is Christ, whatever that is.
Goopity goo.
All the goopity goo that is Christ, spirit and even flesh, like all the things that the man Jesus did at the cross, even though it happened at a certain point in time, it's as if it happened before time began. Mm-hmm. And so I just have come into this belief that we have all come onto earth. We have all manifested here in, of, and through the stuff of Jesus. And as I'm learning quantum mechanics and all that stuff, it's a little bit, I don't quite have all the language for it yet, but there is like this idea of like energy being in both places. It's called superposition. So a particle of energy can be like manifest here that we see, taste, touch, all the things. At the same time, it's also in non-reality, like the thought realm, or so there's this kind of dual positioning that's going on there. So that's why I say goopity goo, because I don't quite have all the language for it yet. I'm still growing in that, but not my job to save. Like, we're all already made of the stuff of him. And so all the stuff of him that we're made of is being drawn to him because of him, not because of me, Like, maybe I have a little bit of influence or maybe advice because I've walked the journey and I've recognized that and I feel that and I've experienced that. But that's, I'm happy to share it, but not everybody's at a place in their journey or their life where they want to go down that road. So that's fine. That's cool. Live, love, be happy. Like, it's all good. So that's the whole saving piece. And then the Jesus with the woman at the well, you used a phrase that I used to use a lot about, that he called her out. And I see that interaction with her like totally different. I see it more as how I see the cross now too. Like, I see the cross different in that he wasn't sent there by an angry God. He chose to step into our world, into our delusion, and let us do what we felt we had to do to satisfy our own need to understand. And so, in my perspective, Jesus with the woman at the well, he wasn't calling her out on anything. She knew something of what this savior was supposed to be, this Messiah that everybody, for hundreds of years had been waiting for. And he had to step into her way of thinking. He had to step into her line of consciousness, her place of understanding, and reveal to her that he knew who she was. He knew her. He had to step in and say, I see you. I know you. I know you've had 5 husbands. I know you're living with a man right now who's not your husband. I know you. I see you. I don't see him calling her out on her sin at all. Like, but that's how I used to see it, like Jesus got to know her first. And then he said, oh, and by the way, Sinnerton, like,
oh gosh, I don't see it that way.
Or like, I mean, maybe that's more harsh, but the whole act of like calling her out, like confronting her with her sin, you know what I mean? Like, in any way, shape, or form, I just see him more of like, I'm with you. I know everything you've ever done because I am you. You are me.
Yeah.
We are one. he said it all over John, especially John 17. And he prayed all the time, like, God, I can't wait for the day that they see and they recognize you and I are one, they and I are one, you and them are one, like we're all one. And so his like calling out or pointing out those things to her, to me, was this moment of like, I know everything. That's how you can know who I am, because I know who you are. We can learn from that and be that same way with people. I don't know everything about everyone else's life or whatever, but I can definitely say something like, hey, I don't have to call you out on anything. I don't have to point out your quote sinful life or whatever you're doing that I may agree or disagree with. Like, that's not the space we need to inhabit. The space I want to inhabit with you is one of like really knowing you, knowing how you feel, wanting to know how you feel, wanting to find common ground, wanting to just sit together, be together, whatever it is. Like, does that make sense? Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's where I'm coming from on all that. But yeah, I had the same kind of upbringing as you. Like, well, not upbringing, like not at home. My mom didn't raise us religious. She kind of let us like do our own thing because she had her own difficulties with religion. But I did grow up going to churches, and that was definitely the churches that I went to, their stance on it. Like, sexuality was a choice. And gender identities when I was growing up weren't really the issues. So like trans wasn't a thing really. So when I was growing up, it was mostly just homosexuality, not even really gender issues like that. Trans and gender things are more recent than when I was growing up. So that's why I may, just kind of default to gay community, because that's just kind of what's, my level of understanding, because that's just the issues of my day. But yeah, definitely, like, that was a choice. That was a lifestyle choice. You're kind of just giving into cravings or whatever, and there were definitely scriptures used to say that it was sinful to be in a same-sex relationship. And so yeah, I grew up with all that same stuff and had to save them from their own choices. Like, I know of even Christian camps to like de-gay you or something. Like, I don't know the right word. Like, to make
like real camps.
Like a camp. Yeah, like a summer camp where you could go and become not gay. I don't know the right word for that, but like, I know. And I have some very good friends who sent people there, and I've heard stories of people who've gone through that and come out of that and been like, I'm so grateful. And like, so I don't want to judge either side. Like, that's another thing that I really want to point out for this month is like, I don't what I don't want this month to be is a place of judgment on either side. Like, I don't want to judge the religious community for where they are currently, because everybody has a journey. And I used to be in that place, and it's not going to be pitchforks on them that brings them out of that place. Just like pitchforks in the gay community doesn't work. Like, it doesn't work either way. Only love works. So, I don't want this month's conversations to be judgmental toward either side of the coin. I don't want us to be excluding people. I don't want us to I'll talk bad about myself and my own, like, my own history or my own experience. Like, I might laugh at myself, but in no way do I mean that to, like, be condemning of other people and where they're coming from. My hope is that, anyone who may engage with this podcast who is in that realm of like thinking that gender issues, trans issues, gay issues, whatever they are, if you're a person who believes that those are lifestyle choices, that they're sinful, that you disagree, that's okay. I still want you to come to the table if you're open to loving people better.
Mhm.
Even though the person across the table you may think differently about their life or their beliefs or their choices, whatever, can we still come sit at the table, have a conversation, learn one way to love someone better?
Yeah. Including yourself. Can I love myself better today? I think something I'm thinking about, first of all, we want to be inclusive of all opinions. But I think within the grace that we're willing to give other people, there's even grace to give to ourselves. Like for you and I, having come from fairly cultish backgrounds and ideas of like pitchforks, it's really easy to look at even just who I was, even things that just come out of my mouth. Like that's why I'm nervous this month, just because things really naturally flow out of my mouth from how I was raised, and it's really hard for me to not be like, you suck, like. And so even as much as we're willing to talk bad about ourselves, we're gonna try not to. We're gonna try to be gracious to not only everybody around the table, but also ourselves in terms of just being inclusive. And I mean, we talk about religious and spiritual issues and how we can deal with those with grace. And this is no different. How could we be gracious with one another, with different ideas? And one thing, that was what I was thinking about, was we see all the time in politics how being super opinionated. I used to watch presidential debates all the time, and they'll get loud and nobody really hears what's going on.
Yeah.
So it's really important that we don't have a presidential debate here.
Yeah, for
we
sure.
want to have a conversation.
Yeah.
A loving one and a fun one. I think it's going to be fun.
I do too.
We're going to learn a lot, and
I think it's going to be heart moving. I know in just my pre-conversations with both Christy and Brendan, there were times in each conversation I just wanted to cry.
Wow.
Like, and that was just the pre-conversation, just the preps, just because, the things that they've been through, the things that have, they've experienced, things that have been done to them or that they've done, or,
who they are.
Yeah. And they're beautiful people. And I can't wait to introduce you to them and our podcast audience to them. And my hope and prayer is that we're going to pull together a bunch of different resources. So with Christy, we really want to be able to also have this moment where she was talking to me in our pre-conversation about how she encounters the first time she encounters someone who's kind of having to like come out of that Western Christian, old way of thinking, is oftentimes because their child is coming out or expressing some confusion or something like that, and they don't know how to engage that conversation. They don't want to isolate their child. They want to, come together and support and love, but they don't know how. So a big goal with our conversation with Christy is going to be to create language and resources for parents who might be needing to encounter this space with their kids or a family member or someone that they love, and learn how to have a healthy conversation that doesn't isolate them, that doesn't push them away, that doesn't, ostracize them or shame them. But, it doesn't force you necessarily to abandon your whole past or your beliefs. We can find a gentle way forward for both. That's the goal in the conversation with Christy. Like, let's find a gentle way forward for parents who need to talk to their kids. And then with Brendan, by sharing his story, my hope is that we'll reach some younger folks who are struggling to figure out, A, who am I? B, what am I like? breaks my heart. He said that
Okay.
because of the things that he heard at church, there were times where he came close to taking his own life because he felt like there was nowhere for him to go. Because if the creator of the universe could never love him,
Wow.
how could anyone else love him? And it just, I just ache at the thought of our kids thinking that about God and about their parents and about their families or whoever. And so my hope is that through Brendan sharing his story, other kids, A, will not feel alone. B, they'll get some resources. We're going to put some resources out specifically for them as well, and help them to make some connections with people if they can't connect with their families because their families just aren't ready, that they'll be able to find places to connect that are healthy and that are further along than they are to kind of help guide them rather than just, you know how it is when you're like in middle school or high school and you just have your peer group. It's like the blind leading the blind sometimes, like it's great to have camaraderie and stuff, but sometimes you just really need someone who's like a mom figure or a dad figure, to just wrap their arms around you and say, it's going to be okay, and Brendan can be almost like a big brother here on the podcast, like for anyone younger who's kind of wrestling and needing to find their way through all that. So it's going to be heartwarming. It's going to be pain. There's going to be some painful times, I think, at least there were for me already in the pre-conversation, times. And we're going to be, digging into some of that. So it'll be painful, but it'll be good because we can learn from those things. If we can bring it out to the light, we can learn from it and we can go forward and we can be better people. We can learn to love better through our mistakes.
Yeah.
So like in April showers, bringing Mayflowers, where we've talked a lot about our mistakes and our dark times and our, our depressions and whatever, what can we do during those times? Now we're going to get into some stuff where people have dealt with some really hard times and identity issues. And yeah, so they're going to be some good conversations and lots of resources, lots of good times, hopefully lots of laughs too. They're both really great, funny people. I'm excited to laugh with them too. We'll have to make it our goal to laugh at least a few times.
Absolutely.
Awesome.
Sounds good. Let's get into it.
Cool. Let's do it. See you next week.
Yeah.
Thanks so much for joining us on the Becoming Home podcast. On behalf of Joe and myself, we want to thank you so much for investing your time here. Don't forget, you can head over to fullyabundantlife.com and grab more resources, grab a free guide on emotional processing tools. It's packed full of information over there. The guide has over 100 emotional words to help you identify exactly what you're feeling, more than just happy, mad, sad, grumpy, hungry, whatever. 100 words or more to help you really identify what's going on inside of you so that you can really process that better. Exercises to process. It's giving tons of information. Somatic, where the emotion may be trapped in the body. There's loads of information in that guide, all for free. So fullyabundantlife.com, you'll see it right when you click on that website. And then if you need other information, I've got tons of stuff there for you to grab. So head on over there. Thank you again for being with us. We'll see you next time.